I'm Ervin Bullock with Compassionate St. Augustine and their Purple Bench Project, and I've asked two friends of mine from different sides of the violence in Israel and Palestine to meet together with me today on the Purple Bench, a place that we hope people will use to get to know people with different perspectives and build understanding and respect. I realized this morning I can't expect them to find a solution to violence. I actually believe that's largely on Western Christianity. I believe we played a major role in this conflict. First, by persecuting the Jewish people for 2,000 years, actually, for everything from bubonic plague to bad weather. We humiliated them, ran them out of town, and in many cases killed them. How could they ever feel safe anywhere? But to be clear, this wasn't caused by Palestinians. In my mind, the Palestinians did not cause the persecution and they did not cause the Holocaust. When Western Christians decided it would, now I have to say this is my version of history, it won't be the only one you will hear. When Western Christians decided it would be good for Jews to have their own country, we gave them another people's land, and then we massively armed them so that they could keep it. We refused to listen to the Palestinian cry for justice. So a place for us to begin is by understanding what both peoples have gone through at the hands of Western Christianity, and I'm a Western Christian. And so that's the perspective I want to bring to this. Jews, because they were persecuted for 2,000 years, we blame them for persecuting Jesus, and Palestinians because we gave their land to another people, and then maligned Palestinians for trying to hold on to it, and we massively weaponized the Jewish people so that they could keep the land. And then we labeled Palestinians who resisted all of this as terrorists. So I think it's a fair way forward for us is to all acknowledge kind of our part in this. And for now, what I'd like to ask my friends is what they most wish for their own people. And do they have any suggestions for first steps towards building more understanding and hopefully someday a fairer, more peaceful future? But first, we may have to edit some of my comments. Go for it, Joe.
Where to begin?
Okay.
All right. I saw Ervin's notes earlier today, and I think it's a mischaracterization of the problem. I think first off, I think she blames Christians way too much. The Jews have been persecuted, bounced around for millennia. As far as a Jewish presence on the land, I mean, you can go back to the 17th century BC, and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Ishmael, and then continue on through all the various empires that have gone through that land up to the present day, and bringing us to the Holocaust, which was a generational trauma to the Jews. But in Ervin's notes, she says that when Western Christians decided it would be good for the Jews to have their own country, we gave them another people's land. The Jews have been on that land for 4 millennia. And yes, they were expelled from the land in, I think, 136 AD, but there was always a Jewish presence there throughout the centuries. And I don't think, and these comments are just my personal opinions, I don't think this has very much to do with land at all. The real question is, does Israel have the right to exist? And no leader of any Palestinian governmental organization has ever uttered the words, Israel has the right to exist. And I think that's the real crux of the problem. Will that ever be resolved? I have no idea. Oh, there was one other statement in Ervin's comments, that the U.S. massively armed Israel. Israel in 1947-48 begged the Western powers to give them arms. Couldn't find anybody other than the Czech Republic who gave them old discarded World War II weapons that they had to kind of piece together. So that was the start of the Israeli military. And I guess that's all of my initial comments. Where are we going to go from here? There has to be some governmental reorganization of Gaza. There has to be buy-in from Egypt, which originally owned Gaza. There has to be buy-in from Jordan, from Saudi Arabia, from Lebanon, Syria, and without going on a real political rant, something has to be done with the head of the snake, which is Iran, that are fanning the flames of all of this. And I will leave it at that.
Okay, now I'm going to let Sawsan, and she might want to edit my things, or she might want to edit Joe's history. What would you add to it, or
I will
change?
add to this that both my parents were born in Palestine. My father was born in 1932, way before the establishment of the State of Israel, and the same did my mom, who was born in 1940. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, like I can go back to 9 grandparents who were born in Palestine. Now, the thing is, and I understand that the Jewish people were always living there, and this is what my parents said, that there were always Muslims, Christians, and Jewish in Palestine who were living peacefully over there. Now, the thing is that when the occupation had happened in 1948, people were denied, the Palestinians were denied their rights of staying in their own land, who they were born at and they grew up at. Their homes, their lands were confiscated, and they were forced to leave their land and move to a different country. So, like, I can't see how that is fair too. I mean, if some other people, for being on a certain religion, they believe that they need to go back to this land, what about the people who were living there already? Like, can you see my point? Like, they became refugees, they became poor. Their rights of being human beings and enjoying the rights of anybody, of safety and security and jobs and education, and even like basic rights like food, anything like of the basic rights of all human beings, they were denied. They became refugees. They were refugees for most all of their lives. So, like, I can't see how is that fair on my people.
It is not.
It's not.
It is absolutely not. There were Jews that immigrated from Europe at the end of World War II, came to Israel to start a new life because their land and possessions had been confiscated. My parents, both my parents, lost their houses and were refugees and were lucky enough to get into the United States. Not all of my family was. They were spread out over the entire map of the world, including Israel. Many of them bought farmland in Israel to start farms, and the farmland was owned by Arabs who sold the land to these Jews that came from Europe. And unfortunately, there were a lot of sharecroppers, and I don't know Sawsan's family history at all. And I don't know if that was the case, but a lot of those sharecroppers were moved off of that land. Their lives were disrupted. They became refugees, but the Jews had bought the land. Now, in the time frame of 48, approximately 20% of the Arabs that were living in Israel stayed in Israel. There are, I think, 2 million Arabs living in Israel today that never left, that are judges on the courts. They're in the Knesset. They own property. Some stayed and did okay. Some became refugees and didn't do very well. Life is hard. The Jews have been kicked around. The Palestinians have been kicked around. Where to heal this generational pain and move forward is a conundrum that some of the best minds in the world, I hope the best minds in the world, have tackled and have not come up with any good solutions to. I am, at this point, just at a loss. I really am at a loss. I don't even know if a two-state solution is possible anymore, given the events of October 7th. I just don't.
The situation is really bad right now. I have told you about some real stories, my own family. My sister-in-law, her sister's husband, and her sister's daughter, they were all in a car. And they went back to their house in Jabalia. And during the time that the IDF announced that it's a safe time for people to move and go get stuff and food and drinks and basic needs. So they went in the car, they took their car and they went to their house to get some pillows and blankets. And then a sniper started shooting at them. So my sister-in-law got shot in her shoulder, and it was really bad. They were about amputating her arm, and her husband, who is an anesthesiologist, was like begging the doctors not to do that. But they don't have enough painkillers, and it was really hard. She stayed at the hospital forever, and they try to get rid of people because other injured people, they come over. Her sister husband passed away because he got shot in the head, right in front of his wife and his daughter, and his daughter was injured badly. The situation is very bad. Like, it's unbearable.
And that's why the violence has been perpetuated from generation to generation. You would hope, or the hope, that the United Nations would be a force of resolving issues like that has been so totally compromised with this latest incident with UNRWA being complicit in the attack and the way the educational system is set up in Gaza. It's a very difficult situation. I really feel for both sides here, and it is going to take real courage by people who can assemble a leadership position, take a leadership position, and bring all sides to the table and come up with some kind of a reasonable, rational solution that's meaningful and sustainable. And I really believe that it is not the average citizens in Gaza, the average citizens in the West Bank, or the average citizens in Israel that are creating this problem. It's the fringes that are using this partly to enrich themselves and partly to just create chaos. They're just some evil people in the world.
It's a pure evil. What's happening right now is pure evil.
It is, absolutely.
So we can all agree on that.
Yep.
And I think we do have different sources of information, which complicates things. I think, but I don't see the point in arguing, for me personally, in arguing the points. Like when you said there's no Arab leaders, there's no Palestinian leaders that recognize Israel. I'd say, well, Arafat did at one
No,
point.
he absolutely not. He was the one that gave you the three no's.
Well,
No recognition, no negotiation,
I
no
know,
peace.
At one point. But see,
He never uttered the words, Israel has the right to exist.
Wait.
Never.
You need to ask Jimmy Carter that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we have different sources of history, let's just say. I guess the thing that gives me some hope here is that I think we do care deeply about the pain on both sides. And you said in the car, Sawsan, when we were coming, if only we could bring people on both sides together who wanted peace. and recognize the humanity of the other side, we might find a way. And I think you're right, Joe, that I think the leaders on both sides it isn't in their interest to find
Right.
peace.
It's not.
So I think the people need it. But I also would say, from my perspective of a U.S. Christian, that we need to do something, because I think it's because, as I said, I think we've been part of the problem, but I also think we have a place. One of the things that worries me is that just this week the U.S. again vetoed a ceasefire, and you probably,
Well,
I know there's a reason that they say they did.
no, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Oh, I don't know
don't
why.
wanna-
I'm
I
not
don't-
keeping mine shut.
No, I don't want to go down that road.
Okay. Well, do we have anything else we might want to say in terms of any first steps towards building more understanding? My hope in this is just that we can hear both stories, and not just y'all hear each other's stories, but other people hear both stories and realize the
What?
suffering that is behind all of this, and find some commitment to how we move to a better place. That's my hope.
You want to take it?
I want to say that the peace is not going to be applicable for one side. If anybody thinks that the Israeli people will be in peace if Palestinians are denied their rights, that's completely wrong. And vice versa. If people think that if Palestinians have their rights, they don't have their rights, and the Israelis will be enjoying peace, it's not going to work. Completely.
Yeah. So both sides have got
it's both sides. It has to be both sides.
And I agree with that statement. I just don't see the path forward. We're sitting on a purple bench in St. Augustine. We're not in tunnels, and we're not having bombs dropped on us, and we're not scrambling to get food and have our children survive this. And we have a different perspective on this than the people that are actually living it. And once you've gone through the trauma of Sawsan's family and my family, it is really difficult to get past the trauma of that. It takes some real courage to make concessions to the other side that has been beating you and killing your relatives, taking your land. It's just very, very difficult. And I think it's going to take generations of re-educating people as to what the real history of the region is. And maybe there's some hope in that. And maybe this conversation will help with the education piece, for what it's worth.
Okay.
I hope so as well. I hope that what is happening right now will be eye-opening for the new generation. I hope people will realize that there will be no peace unless both parties want the peace for each other. This is how it goes.
I just want to say thank you to both of you. I think this is a tough thing I've asked you to do. And this morning I woke up and thought, what have I done? And so I'm really grateful.
And
for
I appreciate you
yeah.
doing
And
your
you did
best.
and you promised me you won't lose a friendship over that. I'm going to remind him on that. So, and I've got a new friend here, and I
Yeah.
treasure
We're
you both.
friends, and I'm giving you more Palestinian food to try.
I know, and maybe we'll
I happen
share
to love
some.
Middle Eastern food.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Okay, well, thank y'all both.